things related to business. Whether you're a business owner, working professional, or someone who wants to start a career in accounting, this is the podcast for you. Hosted by CCK Strategies partners Jeff Frable and Sara Mays, we dive into relevant business and tax matters with working professionals to make these topics less intimidating, relatable, and dare we say fun? Let's get down to business.
Welcome to this week's episode of Two CPAs and the Mic. I'm Jeff Frable with CCK Strategies, and we are covering relevant business and tax topics. We're applying straight and practical information without all the jargon and stuffiness that normally comes along with our industry. And if you're not careful, we might even surprise you with some humor. So again, I'm Jeff Frable. We're glad you're joining us today. I've got my trusty co-host, Sara Mays. I kind of stumble over that every week.
I know you want to say cohort.
But co-host. Sara, what's up, Sara?
Hey, Frable. I'm good. Hey, everybody. I'm Sara Mays. I'm a partner here at CCK and have been working with Jeff for 19 years, dang near. Yeah.
Long time. Yes. Long time relationship. You'll notice if you're one of our reoccurring listeners that KP is not on the episode with us today. She's taking care of some family issues and we will miss her, but we're gonna forge on by ourselves, aren't we, Sara?
Yeah, that's right. We've
got a great guest today. I know he's going to be bringing us lots of wonderful business nuggets. Today we are talking about disaster plans. Now, if you are lacing your shoes to go out for a run or a walk, or you're driving to work, you may think, man, disaster plans sound very boring. Why would I want to keep listening? Well, you are going to want to listen because we are not just giving you tips for how to develop a disaster plan. We are talking about why. And we have got a guest today that has been in the thick of a disaster. So to just to kind of provide some background, our guest today is Marcus, and Marcus Kirkman is with the city of Asheville, and he is the business inclusion manager in the community economic development department of the city of Asheville. Now, you may be sitting there and thinking, why do I care about Asheville, North Carolina? Well, not only is it an incredibly beautiful place to visit, yes, but they have had, within the last year, they've had a major disaster. And Marcus was in the thick of this. And the reason I met Marcus was because I'm chair of the Bixby Metro Chamber this year, and we do an annual, what we call inner city visit, where some of our individuals from Bixby go to other similar towns or cities, and we talk about things that are important to Bixby and how we might make ourselves better. Well, we went there to talk about disaster recovery. In Oklahoma, we have tornadoes, we have floods and all this kind of stuff. But in September of 2024, Marcus and the city of Asheville encountered a major devastating disaster, and they are rising from the ashes like nobody's business.
No pun intended.
And doing an amazing job. And so you want to stay on and hear this story. So without further ado, and I hate that phrase, I don't believe I just used it, but I want to bring Marcus in here. Marcus Kirkman, good afternoon. Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you.
Good afternoon to you both, Sara and Jeff. Really glad to be here. Glad for your listening audience. Marcus Kirkman, as Jeff shared, I serve as the business inclusion manager with the city of Asheville. So thank you. Thank you.
Welcome. Yes, glad you're on. And just so I'm going to insert this too. I have visited the city of Asheville numerous times and was there recently as 2 years ago. And I have to echo Jeff when he was saying it's a beautiful city. It is a beautiful city. It is beautiful. And I mean, now we just did our normal touristy things and visited Biltmore, but just driving through, because that's in kind of the heart of Asheville, is just driving through. It's a gorgeous town and just nestled right in those beautiful mountains.
So Marcus, we've got a lot of people who may not know where Asheville is. Can you just give us some idea of some just different things that we would be looking for that would identify the location of Asheville?
Absolutely. So Asheville is located in western North Carolina, and Asheville is a very significant city geographically and for the economy, because as goes Asheville and blue skies, as goes the rest of the 13, 14 counties in Western North Carolina. It is nestled in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains, encompassed by the Blue Ridge Parkway that runs up and down the East Coast. So it is a hidden gem here in North Carolina.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that, because I'm sure not everybody knows exactly where it is located. And I want to touch on something you just mentioned, Marcus, because I think it comes into play as we continue the conversation. But what is I know you have some industries in Asheville, but given where you are, what is the most significant industry for the city?
That is an incredibly significant inquiry you just mentioned, Jeff, because prior to Helene, the healthcare industry was the main economic engine in the city and in the region. Very close second is tourism. So we have tourism, and then we have healthcare running neck and neck. And one of the lessons learned coming out of Helene is the importance to really diversify the economy, because Helene just did incredible damage to our tourism industry.
Right. So, and with that, when you talk about the tourism industry, when during the year is your busy season, we'll call it?
Our peak busy season, and especially for your listeners, the third weekend in October is the ideal time to come to Asheville. You may be asking why. Reason being, as Sara spoke to, our trees are at peak season as far as changing the colors. And that is the time when you really get a chance to look out and see this incredible landscape here.
So
that's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Fall foliage.
We don't have that much in Oklahoma, so we don't have that much experience. Our trees turn for about maybe half a week, and then it's beautiful while it's turning. But yeah, to see the mountains, the rolling mountains and the trees, it's obvious why that the tourism is a big generator for you all, big industry. So before we get into Helene and the flooding and everything, Marcus, give us just a little bit more background of your role as the business inclusion manager. What exactly do you deal with and work towards?
Thank you for that question. I'll give some context. I'm a retired veteran. So I spent 22 years in the Navy serving our nation. So service is an incredible part of how I show up every day. I came on board with the city of Asheville about 4 years ago with the commitment to be a public servant. And I've been in the economic development department now for about a year and a half. What I really want to emphasize, especially for our audience, is sometimes when we use the word community, it can become so everyday language that we really forget the essence of what community is. So our department intentionally includes the word community because we're committed to building actual community together. What I get a chance to do every single day is I work with those businesses who are underrepresented in our marketplace and competing for our contracts. With the city of Asheville, we have 4 main procurement areas: construction, professional services. Professional services encompasses architectural engineers, construction managers at risk, and surveyors. Then we have general services, and then the purchasing of tangible goods. So what I do is I work with the underrepresented businesses in our community, finding out what their business needs are, finding out what their business goals are, connecting them to community resources to effectively compete for our contracts with the city. And that increases competition in the marketplace. It drives down cost of goods and services, and it's a win-win for the entire community.
Very good. And you've actually been doing this role for a little over a year, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So obviously there's a lot going on in Asheville, North Carolina. So let's go to September of 2024 and kind of set the stage. To say that there was a flood in Asheville doesn't give it justice. So I know the stories you told, Marcus. The one I hope you touch on is Sara referred to Bitmore. Maybe kind of us some information about what that is and why it's important to Asheville. But that story about you going to Bitmore Village on Sunday, and I'll let you tell the story, but what happened there just really touched me. So talk about the flood and just what it did to the area and how it happened.
Yes. So Asheville is, when I say that it is a gem in North Carolina, that is not to be underestimated. It truly is. My wife and I have been living here for several years, and Bitmore Village is a historical symbol in Asheville with the Biltmore House. Every December during the Christmas holiday season, it draws international attraction here. And there's so many cool little stores and boutiques down in the Bitmore Village area. For the first 2 years of living here, my wife and I kept saying, we're going to go down to the Biltmore Village and just walk around and check. Yeah. And I'm not really a boutique kind of guy, but it is a wonderful time to spend with the First Lady. So after church one Sunday, beautiful. This is the Sunday before Helene hit.
Oh, wow.
On a whim, we decided we'll go down and have brunch. Went down, had brunch in Biltmore Village, walked around the cobblestone areas, saying we'll be back next weekend is what we ended up saying. So Monday, and it's really important for the audience to understand, it wasn't just the 1 to 2 days that contributed to the devastation. The rain actually started on Monday, and it was nonstop rain, 24 hours a day from Monday until Thursday evening when the bulk of the storm hit. And the significance of that is that it saturated the grounds. Asheville surrounded by beautiful trees, a beautiful tree canopy. The grounds became extremely soft. It was the perfect storm, no pun intended, with the winds that came in and then the additional flooding. And it was the recipe for the disaster that we experienced. So by the time the winds hit on Thursday, it was utter devastation from Thursday until Sunday.
Yeah, and that was one thing that I didn't know a whole lot about the flooding, but was very interested to hear in that it was the storms that came through early in the week that set the stage when Helene hit Asheville. And the other thing, and I think I mentioned this to you when we had an opportunity to meet, I knew about the Asheville flooding. I mean, I had heard about it on the news. And the thing that really struck me is interesting, or that I didn't understand, is Asheville, when I looked it up on the map, is, like you said, it's in western North Carolina. It's not on the coast, which is where a lot of the hurricanes come through. So it also was kind of a weird hurricane in that it came up through, I guess you would say, the mainland and struck the western part of North Carolina.
That element really caught all of us by surprise, even as we were preparing for the storm, because who would ever imagine in Western North Carolina with this elevation that we'd experience that type of weather? What I was really fortunate to be a part of is our emergency operation planning and our contingency of operation planning that happened a year and a half before Helene hit. And being a part of those conversations, again, bringing in my military experience and having served, we were able to put in place the emergency operations plans and the COOP plans. However, Helene is just one of those storms that preparation is absolutely necessary, but you really don't learn until after it's on the ground and it does its damage.
So you and your wife went down to the village to have that brunch on Sunday. It started to rain on Monday, and you never made it back that following Sunday for brunch because of the disaster that hit. Talk a little bit about some of the statistics of people impacted, the amount of time. I mean, the thing that I throw out there is that, correct me if I'm wrong, the city literally did not have water for 52 days?
That's exactly right.
And that just kind of you just think about that and it doesn't seem like a big deal, but talk a little bit about why that is a big deal and how because you have a lot of service organizations, a lot of restaurants and things of that nature that cater to the tourist industry. So talk about some of those stats so people can understand this wasn't just a thing where a couple trees fell down and we had to chainsaw them and get them off the road.
That is exactly right. I want to give major credit, of course, to our leadership and our emergency planning for the city and also our water department. Incredible human beings who really were heroes and heroines in this moment. So the storm hit September the 27th, and we were without water until well into the end of December. So when we were completely out of water, that same water source is what we use. You mentioned, Jeff, about the restaurants, everyday uses, being able to cook food, everything from businesses being able to stay open, those who were still there. So what we did as a city and a county is we ended up having to identify bringing in water sources into the community because the water that was out there in the rivers, it was tainted. And you had chemicals, you had everything you could imagine in the waters. So one of the major things we had to do was identify nationwide water sources to bring in and start trucking this water. And we set up water stations outside of City Hall in the plaza, outside the county, distributed water sites throughout the community so that we can issue potable and non-potable water to the community. Now it makes good logical sense, but what it takes to pull all of that off, the communication piece, to share with the community where to go and get the water, which water is potable water, what is not potable water. All of those are those very intricate, important details to make sure that the community is safe during those situations.
Well, I even remember watching the videos of, the streets were a mess. So, how long did it even take to just clear the roadways so people could get to City Hall?
Yes. So the order of operations, safety is first and foremost in those times. So now when the storm first hit, we're focused on saving lives. We're focused on recovery. That work went on for a solid month, 3.5, 4 weeks, just to continue to reach people. So when we look at a map of the nation and a map of North Carolina, it looks really nice and clean cut on the map. But when you get into these mountains and you look at your topology and you realize that the elevations in different places, now we've lost communication with people in high elevations and we don't know what their situations are and the roads are blocked. All of these dynamics are playing out. So the first month and a half or so was based on recovery. And when we got to that point where we had identified, we found as many people we could. Certainly there was a loss of life, well over 100 or so members in our community we lost. Then we could focus on clearing the roads. So our debris work and starting to clear the roads didn't happen until well into the end of October.
Wow. Well, and I even remember too watching and seeing, because I used to live in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I know I-40, and how did you even get people to even come into Asheville, because the interstates were closed for a long time? So was it a lot of helicopter clearing and stuff like that?
Yes. So the I-40 leg connecting Asheville heading to Tennessee, that whole leg of I-40 was shut down for almost 2.5 months. And there were a lot of back roads through the mountains that we had to use to navigate to get resources in. But helicopters were a major source of food, getting food to our community and water and lifting people out of medical situations. Hell, it was all hands on deck across the board.
So when we're talking about the water, we're talking about the physical body needs. There's also other needs that we we think we need as human beings. And I'm talking about internet and communications. And you all had quite a conversation and a presentation about that as well. So, Marcus, would you talk a little bit about how the city decided to communicate with people, and also talk about some of the nuances that took place when the internet went out? Because I thought some of those stories they're crazy about where people went for the internet and how they got connected back to the world.
We touch the internet every single day, but we really don't realize how much is needed until situations such as Helene. And just within the municipality of the city and the county and downtown, all of our communication links were out. We couldn't even talk to one another. All of our email systems now, IT department was shut down. So one of the things that was brought into the area was a Starlink system to come in to start making connection in the city so we could share information and resources. Our Chamber of Commerce became a major hub for a communication site where people could come up to the chamber and connect there so that they can let loved ones know that they were okay, so that they can get connected to say what his resources were. They could share what their emergencies were. The county also connected with our community colleges that were there when their system started coming back on board to make the community colleges satellite systems spots where the community could go and get the resources they need. And that's why I start back, Jeff and Sara, and talking about the importance of community and what the resources are, because many of us started doing non-traditional things in order to support our community and offer the services that were needed.
Well, and that kind of leads into my next question, Marcus, is you have this business inclusion component to your service. What did you specifically do during this time? I mean, was it literally, I'm going to get up in the morning, go to City Hall and go where I'm needed? Or did you have a defined specific role for a period of time, or how did all that work?
Great question. So we go to Biltmore Village on Sunday, have a great time. Storm hits on Thursday. By Sunday, we live in Candler. I went to Home Depot, which is 10 minutes down the road. The line was like 2 days long. Everybody's trying to get in there. There's another Home Depot on the west side of town, and I'm sharing this story because it really helps paint the picture. It's 20 minutes from Candler. When I get there, I get what we needed, some hand saws, things like that, because I had a lot of trees down. It took us 3 hours to get from across town back home, and there was only one road open where we can get back home.
Yeah.
So that told me on Sunday that we're really in a bad situation. So I had no communication here at home. I couldn't communicate with my colleagues. So what I did was by Monday, I drove downtown and kind of navigated the area. And I got down to City Hall and I saw that everything was shut down. I knew that the EOC was up and running. And we had a food distribution center by the World Food Trade Organization that came in, and they set up a major food distribution center downtown. So for the first 3 to 5 days, volunteering downtown, getting food out to the community. Everybody was coming in. That was what the first week was about. And it wasn't until that second week that I was able to get back into the office, and we got communications back at City Hall, where I could start reaching out to the businesses in the community to say, what are your needs? What are your urgent matters? How can we support you? What resources do you need? How can you help? And it was incredible to see the response of the business community saying, we just want to jump in and help wherever we can. And we began coordinating with the resources.
So I want that's another great segue, Marcus, when we're talking about resources. Can you talk, and I want to follow up with another question, but can you talk a little bit about working with the federal government, FEMA, how that, I mean, I remember we talked when we visited about how they have a specific way of doing things, and you all kind of lined up with that process and had a pretty positive experience. So can you kind of talk about like how long it took for FEMA to kind of get there, and then how well that process worked out?
Yes, Jeff. I'm really grateful that I had 22 years of military experience behind me, because otherwise it would have been like drinking water from a fire hose. It's so much happening. So we had FEMA come in. Of course, we had the Army Corps of Engineers to come on site, starting with FEMA first. FEMA was on the ground within a short period of time. We're talking within a week or a few days. They're in the area. They're setting up shop. The challenge, one of the major challenges in that situation when you have federal government engaged in a major disaster, is that sometimes you speak different languages. Your goals and priorities and how you approach it is one way. Then we have our federal government and all the requirements that are there. So what it really takes in those situations, and I'm really grateful for FEMA and all of the support that came in and our leadership, is that we got, once everybody was in the room within a week or two, we got into a rhythm of setting up the meetings every single day, that cadence of understanding the language, understanding the requirements, prioritizing the needs. And that rhythm was established early on. And it was almost seamless within a week or so once we start sharing that common language and how we do business and prioritizing the work.
I want to go back to the comment you made earlier. It may have slipped through some people's understanding, but you mentioned that it was just a year previously that the city had gone, I guess what I would say is they kind of reworked their entire disaster contingency plan a year in I mean, obviously you had no idea, but just the way the timing worked out, that had just been pulled back together and revised a year before the storm, right?
That is correct. So the emergency manager, Assistant Fire Chief Jeremy Knighton, who did an incredible job. This is really how it unfolded. So I was the liaison for the fire department with regards to training. So we already had a really great relationship. And Jeremy called me one day and said, "Marcus, I need your help." I said, "Whatever you need, I got you." He said, "I need you to read some requests for proposals." I said, "I got it." He didn't tell me how many. And what he was working on was the emergency operation plan. So we had about 25 RFPs that come in. They're like 70 pages long, each one of them. And it was a team of maybe 12 of us around the city who evaluated those RFPs, not knowing that a year later, we'd have to activate that. So that plan was actually finalized February, March of 2024. Wow. We had it in place, and then the storm hits September. So it was really serendipitous that Jeremy just had that inkling and said, we need to put this in place. And we were able to use that. And it was extremely effective and supportive for us.
So let's kind of transition now the conversation. We've talked about the extent of the devastation and what was going on. Let's talk a little bit about disaster planning. And so, and I think one of the reasons why this is important, and that those couple days we came to Asheville, we not only met with you and a few of your colleagues in the city, but we also met with the Chamber of Commerce. And one of the things that I was amazed by, and I guess I just never put two and two together, but we were talking with the Chamber and they made a comment about, FEMA is really, and if I say anything that is not reasonable, Marcus, please correct me. But FEMA is basically prioritizing human life, which makes perfect sense. They're catering to individuals to make sure that they survive this storm and go forward. And I just assumed that meant businesses. And that really isn't the case. So when you're talking about aid from FEMA and help from FEMA, you're really talking about an individual level and not the concept of a business. And one of the things that was going through my mind is, well, it's the business that ultimately provides the funds to help their employees and teammates live. And so what comes first, the chicken or the egg and all that? But in all this, there's really not a whole lot of help from a business perspective coming from FEMA. So what was your general feel when you started getting back, once we kind of got past the initial human life urgency and started getting back out into the business world? What did you see from businesses? What kind of stories were they telling you? Were they prepared for something like this generally or not?
A really, really, really great question. And with regards to FEMA's primary focus and concern, it is around the safety, well-being of human life and addressing that first and foremost. What we heard over again and what we saw in talking with our business partners and our business community was this fear whether or not they could bounce back. This event with Helene did not happen in a bubble. So we're only a few years removed from COVID and what was happening with COVID. And the storm hits September the 27th. We're going into our peak season with tourism. And now everything's up in the air, whether or not our businesses could bounce back. Tourism being one of our main economic engines. So what we heard from our businesses are, we need our businesses are damaged. One of our major business districts, Jeff, you may have heard this conversation at the chamber, is the River Arts District, which is really like the heart and soul, culture-wise, to Asheville. These are local artists who lost everything. Their businesses, their buildings were decimated. Not only their buildings, but their original art pieces. So their livelihoods were turned upside down. Those are things you cannot replace. And we have our River Arts District, which is a main business district, that is now gone. So now we're faced with, how do we address that need? How do we support? And what does support look like for our businesses? Your question about business resilience, especially in the wake of a storm, I think it's really important for our audience to understand and see that support looks completely different depending on what the business is. After the storm was over, the grants that we were able to offer, a $5,000 grant for one small business may have been the lifeline that they needed. That same $5,000 for another small business was like, you really just put 5 cents in their pocket, and it does not touch the need. So we had to start hearing specifically what the overall business needs were across the board, meeting with those businesses, listening, and then start coming up with a game plan on how best to support. Probably 40% of our businesses left and had to close their doors and could not come back because the damage was too great.
Yeah, and I remember us having a conversation, and maybe it was with the chamber folks about, and you mentioned it, you had the double whammy over the course of a few years of COVID and then this disaster, and you had individuals that had businesses, and I'm sure there were some that came back after COVID, but then after that second one, we're like, we just can't make it. Or you had individuals that had successful businesses for 20 to 30 years and said, hey, it's just not worth it for me to come back. And so there was several different types of reasons why business did not come back. Do you feel like you're still in that situation where you're still waiting to see if businesses are coming back? Or do you feel like the majority have either come back or made their decisions, or are you still waiting to see kind of what's to happen?
It's a mixed bag. What we've been able to do, and when I say we, there's some incredible human beings in Asheville. our chamber, our business leadership, certainly city, county government. What we've been able to do is stabilize the situation with regards to our businesses. And what I mean by stabilize is we don't see the number of doors closing that we were seeing before, and we don't hear that same type of language. At the same time, the next 6 months or so are really going to be critical with regards to the decisions that we make with regards to being able to offer support for those businesses that still may be on that borderline with their needs. One thing I want to make sure that I highlight in our conversation when we talk about business resilience is business insurance. We hear the horror stories, and many of our areas get devastated by natural disasters. And certainly my heart goes out to the Texas community and what they're going through right now. Business insurance is a very real thing. It is a real thing that can make or break businesses. So when we're talking about business preparation, really understanding what the business insurance policy is, what it will cover, very much like a home. So when we look at the River Arts District, that is in the flood zone. So that is a major issue with building back and what's possible in that area, just around the insurance piece.
Right. Yeah. And I was just when you were talking about the River District, I was just going to make the obvious comment that the reason it's the River District is because it's right by the river.
Right by the river.
And we had the opportunity to visit that district. And I remember after our conversation, someone in our group brought this back up and you mentioned it, but it's one of those things you just, as a CPA, you just don't think about it. But when the fact that the flood had taken away these original pieces of work that these artists have done, I mean, that would be like if any major music artist lost all their original recordings, and you gotta, I mean, not only the pricelessness of that, but also just the emotional connection that those artists had to that work. And just to know that they've got to recreate it has got to be an amazing thing. So Marcus, where does Asheville sit today? We are currently recording this in August. The 27th of September is coming up in another month and a half. You are on the verge of another busy season, although the storm did have an impact on that beauty, right? To some degree, to your canopy. So where's Asheville right now, and where are they headed in the next couple months?
Asheville is resilient, first and foremost. We are absolutely resilient. We are not going away, and we are open, first and foremost. What Helene has done, especially with our business community, Sara and Jeff, is really get a chance to know your neighbor as a business entity, to know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what resources they have. And that's really solidified us and brought us even more closer in helping one another through this storm. What we are doing with regards to taking a look at what's possible in the future is we're being very intentional, we're being very strategic. The next 6 months are critical for us to say how we invest our money back into business. We want to see our businesses, small businesses, continue to thrive and continue to grow. We are preparing for our upcoming tourist season. Our foot traffic is coming back to pre-storm levels. So we're seeing the interest to come back to Asheville. We've got activities and pop-up events and concerts that are happening in Asheville. So we welcome you back to Asheville. We are resilient.
If you're listening to this podcast, that's an open invitation to go visit Asheville, right?
It most certainly is. It most certainly is.
So Marcus, as you were working with these businesses in a recovery process, did you find that many of them had disaster plans, or most did not and were just kind of flying by the seat of their pants to recover? And do you think that having a disaster plan would help? And if so, why?
Really, really great, important questions. What we witnessed and what we saw and heard most businesses had a contingency plan in place. Nobody in the nation had a Helene contingency in place. And those are two different conversations. What it highlighted for many of our businesses, and certainly for us with the city, is what business support can look like in the wake of natural disasters and other devastation. I highlighted one thing that all of the business community agrees on is the importance for us to say, yes, tourism is a main part of our economic engine, but what else can be birthed in Asheville that can also balance out our economic engine and what we have to offer here? Many of our businesses are in that battle with their insurance companies right now for the payouts for what's needed there. So we're still taking those really important steps, recovery steps.
I would imagine there's still some outstanding stuff with FEMA as well, because that just generally takes time, right?
It does take a lot of time.
All right. So as we start to wrap this up, Marcus, if you thought there was maybe 1 to 3 significant lessons that you and your colleagues learned through this process, what would you say those are?
I would say that whenever you, as a community, you experience a disaster like this, providing the opportunity for your community to be a part of the recovery process is incredibly significant, and it's a healing situation. So for those businesses and those artists who lost their paintings, we cannot replace those. But when they say we want to roll up our sleeves and get in, how can we help? That helps to build momentum in our community, number one. Highly recommend that jurisdictions and cities, if you've not committed to and invested in an emergency operation plan and a contingency of operation plan, highly recommend you to do that. You learn within your community where the gaps are. It can be communication, it can be logistics, it can be a number of things. But just going through that process really highlights how prepared your community is. Number two. Third, we say it often, communication is the key. Both the physical communication, the ability to access information, taking a look at your systems and say, are they up to date? Do we need to upgrade? Is it time for us to change out? And then already having really good relationships in your community, with your business community and with your residents. Because in that storm, a lot of times when we think about first responders, we would think about the fire department and would think about the police, but truly, in those situations, the first responder is your neighbor. That is your first responder. So that relationship with your neighbor, whether it's a residential neighbor or a business neighbor, is absolutely critical in the midst of a storm.
Yeah. I think I asked this question before when we met, but do you feel like, there's a period of time after something like that happens where everybody comes together? Do you feel like you're still in that, what I would call somewhat of a honeymoon period, that's still the general feel and attitude in the city? Or I'm assuming you're not back to business as usual.
Really great question. I'll preface it with this, Jeff. One of the major successes in our response to Helene was our opportunity to work with Ashbrit, who's an emergency management company out of Florida, and they came in to help us with debris removal. So got a chance to work directly with Ashbrit as a prime contractor and local businesses to provide debris removal support. That debris removal work was incredibly important to clear our streets, but more importantly, it built that sense of community. I'm helping to rebuild my community, and that momentum is overflowing into our community now, where we're really saying that we're all in this together and we will recover back to even better than what we were. It's a tangible sense that you feel. You don't feel the despair as much. It's hopeful. It's hopeful about what's possible, and just knowing it's really going to take all of us, and we're committed to it to get through.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, we very much appreciate you sharing your story and your background with us. I guess the thing when I was sitting there listening to it, I just wanted people to hear that there's a lot that goes on outside the four walls that impacts each one of us, and one of those times that you might be the one involved. And so these are kind of things that you don't stick your head in the sand about, that it doesn't seem like you're really doing anything and it's not important. But when something does happen, you can definitely make a difference by being prepared. So thank you for all your wisdom and insight. And thanks to you and your colleagues for all that you did during that period of time. But before we let you go, there is one thing we do in our podcast that we need to do here. And what is that, Miss Mays?
Rapid fire questions.
Right on.
Okay. All right. So I got some questions for you so we can, our listeners can learn to know who Marcus Kirkman really is. Question number 1, how often do you floss?
Daily.
Oh, okay.
Good answer.
I like the grill. The grill.
Okay. Number 2, early bird or night owl?
Oh, night owl.
Okay.
Night owl.
All right.
Flowing at night.
Marcus, where is your happy place?
In my meditation practice.
Okay.
In my breath. Yes.
What's your superpower, Marcus?
Oh, that is a really great question. I would say Marcus's superpower is the ability to build meaningful relationships and connect with people.
Very nice. Okay. I love this one. North Carolina or Duke?
Oh, North Carolina all day.
I don't know about that, Marcus.
Now, when I was writing this down, I thought it'd be kind of a no-brainer, but Asheville has, don't they have North Carolina at Asheville that plays sometime in the tournaments and stuff like that?
That is exactly right.
Okay.
All
right.
Exactly.
Well, you're good in my book, my friend. North Carolina all day long. Okay. Last question, and I'm setting you up with a softball question here.
All right.
And you can only take like a minute or so to answer it. But Marcus, what's your favorite number and why?
My favorite number is 22. And the why behind that is, in the course of my journey and my faith and my walk and my purpose and my meaning, I always get divine inspiration. 22 pops up all the time. I spent 22 years in the Navy. My son was 22 years old when I was 22 years old when he was born. 22 is just with me. And it's a number that has significant meaning and purpose.
Yeah, we're actually recording this on a Zoom call, and I can see your 22 lapel pin still there. So that was the first thing that attracted me to you when I first met you. Is my eyes saw that, and I was like, "What's that?" So that was a softball question, my friend.
Right on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for taking your time. As we wrap up here, we want to tell our listeners that if you want to email us about anything, if you have a question, comment, concern, you have an idea for another episode, email us at podcast@cckcpa.com. That's podcast@cckcpa.com. Be sure to review, comment, like, share, and all those kind of things with our episodes. We would appreciate that. Special thanks to CCK Strategies for giving us this opportunity to utilize this platform, which is a little bit different in our industry. We're very appreciative of that. Christy Porter, she's not with us today, but thank you for all your help as our on-air producer. To Robert Mays, thank you for the intro and outro music. To our wise sage, Clarence Fisher with Tulsa Internet Marketing Services, thank you for helping us get these things through our past the goal line. And then to our teammate, Emily, thank you for everything you do behind the scenes. So with that, we'll wrap up. Thank you again, Marcus. Mays, it's always good to talk to you. And I hope that all of our listeners join us next time when these two CPAs get together to have a chat and you get to find out who's on the mic.
The information provided on this podcast is for general informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute accounting, tax, legal, or financial advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations change and individual circumstances vary. Always consult with a qualified CPA or professional advisor before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of any organizations they are affiliated with. Listening to this podcast does not create a client-accountant relationship. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree to those terms. And that's a wrap for this episode of Two CPAs in the Mic. If you found today's episode helpful, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. Have questions or ideas for a topic? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at podcast@cckcpa.com.